Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is the Garbage Can Cuda, which continues to be in pieces. In case you're somehow not familiar with the Garbage Can Cuda, this is a 1966 Barracuda with a 1966 Dart nose, which I got way back in 2014. I actually traded my beloved 1970 Dart Swinger for this car. It was an ex-drag racer that had been turned into a street destroyer in a very ratty fashion. The Garbage Can Cuda is a moniker well deserved. This car has been a fixture on the channel for a long time. I actually featured it in a few videos way back toward the beginning when my friend Jordan still owned the car and we were working on it for him. Eventually, we closed our business, he moved back to Utah, and I made a deal to keep the car here. It moved into my yard and it sat around looking kind of like this for a long time until my friend Donnie with the YouTube channel Big Wrench Tech came to visit and we painted it. Now it looks more like this. Still crappy, but less. If you're interested, there's a complete playlist on the channel called The Garbage Can Cuda that you can go back and watch to get the story so far. Really, to get the full story on my current plans, you need to know what's going on with this thing, Dale's Demon. This is an original 344-speed Demon, which I've done some drag racing with. The last times I got with it last year, 791 in the 8th mile, which isn't too embarrassing. This car is special. It's a 2-owner, original paint, 87-something thousand mile Survivor. And I really don't want to smash it into a center wall or anything on the drag strip, so I decided to retire this thing from drag racing and move all of those efforts to another car. The Barracuda, therefore, became my new drag racing project. The idea here is to apply everything that we've learned on Dale's Demon, but crank it up to 11.5. Not the horsepower necessarily. As a matter of fact, this 273 I'm building is probably going to have less power than the 360 currently under the hood of the Demon, which ironically was originally meant to go back in the Barracuda, but that's this whole other thing. However, it's going to be wild in many other ways. For one thing, we're going to put a YN tunnel ram with dual quads on top. It'll have higher compression, better ported heads, and fender well headers as well. The transmission will be another 4-speed, but it's going to be this unit. This is an all-aluminum slick shift build I completed in a previous video. It's going to have a vertigate shifter. It will have the same 48 gears that are currently in the Demon. We'll be pulling these out in a little while here. The Demon is a complete streetable car with a complete interior and all the lights and the bumpers. On the Barracuda, I've made some decisions that are very different from that. For one thing, you'll notice the hood's gone. So are the hood hinges and the springy thingies. All of that has been deemed unnecessary. I also did the front bumper delete. All we're going to see up here is shiny grille. And yes, it is shiny now, thanks to Alan. And then the front side of an aluminum radiator, which I'll probably black out. I got another one of these factory appearing aluminum units like I put in the Charger for the Barracuda. I would have gotten it in the factory appearing black, but it costs an extra $80 and that seemed excessive. One of my favorite parts of this car, the Moroso cable drive tack. It's bolted onto the cowl here outside of the car, and you'll notice that roughly 7,500 RPM is pointed straight up. I have the matching glorious direct connection iron-bodied cable drive compatible distributor to attach to that thing. That's what Dale ran in the Demon in the 70s. In a previous video, I gutted this interior, the dash, the wiring, everything. I think I'm going to leave the door panels in place for sound-related reasons, and I'm not going to pull the headliner, but basically everything else in here is stripped. Some people want to see me put the gauges back in. I'm thinking about it, but they're not going to do anything. The wheel is off currently. Alan's going to clean the horrible spray paint off of that, so it'll be kind of sort of shiny. It's one of those cool The 500 wheels, so you know it's going back in there. I got these cool Econoline seats from Evan at Rocket. I think these are perfect for the old school stripped down lightweight drag racer vibe. Unfortunately, I don't have any tracks for them. I'm currently trying to find some early A-body tracks. Those have adjustable height, and we should be able to adapt them to these with a plate so I can get the seats where they need to be. For now, I might be borrowing the buckets out of my 63 Valiant. Anyway, there's been all kinds of stuff happening with the Barracuda off camera. Part of that stuff is ordering things, like these brand new Mickey Thompson slicks, for example. FedEx just dropped these off. The tracking said he was supposed to be dropping off front runners too, but at least we're halfway there. Anyway, speaking of things happening off camera, this car now has an 8 3/4 axle housing. I did a video on this when I pulled it out of a 65 Barracuda Tom Hergert had for a while. I cleaned it up and painted it black and made it all pretty, and then I left this car sitting with no axle under it for a year or something in my yard. Anyway, it's now installed, and as you can see, it's got some shiny new leaf springs as well. Unlike the Demon, which has factory 340 leaf springs, this thing has the fancy super stock high performance leaves. These are asymmetrical leaves with some extra preload on this rear rear right. You can always identify these springs by these two short segments. They're cut off here and they point forward. One old school Mopar drag racing tech tip for the rear leaf springs is to pull these clamps to allow the springs to fan out on the hit. And then you move those clamps up to the front, maybe even adding some extra ones, such that this forward segment of the spring is clamped super solid. It kind of acts like a traction bar that way. This car did have a nice set of KYB shocks. We're going to be getting rid of those. The back, well, they're too short. With our new leaf springs, these don't come anywhere near to the mounting pin. Also, we want something fancier back here. Modern dual adjustable drag racing shocks would be a great way to go, but we're not going to do that. We're going to use the spare, slightly rusty adjustable race shocks Dale had for the Demon from the 70s. Anyway, that's most of the important stuff that's happened, so now we join this project somewhere in the middle. As you can see, it currently has no rear wheels, or drums, or axle shafts. Our donor axle did actually have complete and correct 10-inch 8 3/4 rear brakes, but the shoes aren't looking too hot. Look at that crazy curve. Also the heat checking and stuff. And the wheel cylinders, well, they look like this. Maybe this would have been okay. Maybe. Anyway, I feel good spending a couple bucks on that stuff. Strangely, we were missing one very important thing from both of these drum brakes, and that is the manual lever that actuates the parking brake function. We really need that. So now we're having to try and find a donor for those parts. If by some miracle the arms from 9-inch brakes work, well, we're good, but I'm not holding my breath on that. What a unit. Don't worry about the fact that the whole shifter linkage fell apart a bit ago. Now don't yell at me, but for the next several minutes you're going to hear horrible air compressor noises in the background. It's not my fault. Well, it kind of is my fault, but I can't fix it. Anyway, Alan's doing the brakes for the 8 3/4 axle. And with all of that done, we could put the gear chunk from the Demon in there and then put axle shafts in, and the whole rear end is like finished. All of these things have to happen in a certain order, so we're trying to do that. While he's doing that, I'm finally trying to get these cylinder heads finished. I talked about these in a previous video months ago, and I have literally done absolutely nothing with them since then. Horrible air compressor noises. Anyway, I'm doing all the same stuff to these heads that I did on the 920 casting number heads for Mark's 318 some months back. And I did a video on the subject, so you can go check that out if you're curious. It's quite a while later, and I'm almost done with the intake bowls on this one head. Of course, there's a ton more to do, like an entire second head, for example. And then the port sides, and then, the exhaust. But we're getting places. Meanwhile, the gear chunk is coming out of Dale's Demon. To do this, we removed the wheels, the brake drums, the axle shafts, which are just held in by the 5 nuts on each side. You knock them out about this far, and then you've got plenty of space to pull the center chunk out. Alan's got the nuts on the center chunk loose now, and we're slowly draining the oil into this custom-made drain pan. I'm hoping to reuse this gear oil because it's brand new. You know what? On second thought, new oil. What a good idea. Yes. Maybe. Nice. Yeah, apparently I didn't have a gasket last time, so I just kind of gooped it with silicone. That works fine, but now we have to clean it off. This is the 488 chunk that Dale ran in the day. This thing works amazingly well. On the drag strip anyway. On the street, it's terrible. It's lots of fun stoplight to stoplight, but highway driving, not so much. Buttons stayed in there. You need those unless you're going to run the green bearings, the ball bearing type. I've always preferred the factory type tapered bearings, but then I've never had dedicated drag cars before. I may consider them for the Barracuda in the future, but for now, we're sticking with the stock stuff. Of course, this housing is wearing the adjustable pinion snubber with a brand new rubber I just installed. We're going to leave this on the 489s and throw this in the Barracuda complete as you see it. We'll put a stock one on the 410s. Really glad you're doing that. Now it's time to deal with the fun part of this equation, the intake port. See, I'm running this YN dual quad tunnel ram manifold. It's probably the coolest piece on the entire car, aside from the cable drive tack. And there's a bit of an issue because these are intended to be run on 360s, which is not to say this port is 360 size. It's not. The problem is it's flush with the 360 port right at the top. And if you compare that to our 318 head, well, it's very, very different. Meanwhile, our 318 head port is almost flush at the bottom of this. My concern is that they really ought to match up here at the top of the port. I don't necessarily want to make this the gigantic 360 size, but trying to use the smaller 318 port size, this tunnel ram port overhangs that by quite a bit. I know a bit of a mismatch here isn't the end of the world, but it just seems really bad in this case. So what I'm gonna do is try and match them as best I can. You see, the top of the port in the manifold is flush with the top of the 360 port in this gasket. So what I did was I scribed the top of that port from the gasket onto our 318 head. Now the width, that is not gonna be the 360 size. That would come all the way to like here, and most of that extra port area would still be shrouded by the push rod. So that seems completely pointless. In a perfect world, I'd probably add material to the bottom of the ports in the head to more closely match this. I'm probably not gonna do that though. How much of a difference is this gonna make? I don't know. This is all just a guess. Look how much more bowl area you can see from here now. That's gotta be a good thing, probably. Of course, I did knock down the pushrod clearance a bit. Not all that much, but my thumb fits here now, and it certainly doesn't in a stock port. Well, aside from that little guy, which I don't want to talk about, this is looking pretty good. Well, I've been getting all greasy and metal dusty. Alan's been working magic over here. The 410 chunk is back in the Demon, sealed in place and tight. Small but fixable boo-boo. I didn't think about this. Alan found one of these buttons on the ground and went to put it back in. The other one was not there. Apparently, well, that happened, and then I picked it up quite a while ago. It was sitting on my wiring cart. Anyway, we can install these after the fact. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but we can fish them in there with a magnet, and then hopefully kind of sort of somehow pull the magnet out and leave them behind. Again, without these buttons in there, you cannot get your tapered bearings set right. You've got to have these for the axle to bottom out on. Then you adjust the end play over on the passenger side. This turned out to be the magic for getting the buttons in there. The long extendable magnet to fish it into the hole, and then the wire there to poke the thing with the magnet off to the side ever so slightly, and jerk the magnet backwards, and the button stays put. There's the second one in, expert level. So Alan noticed something kind of neat about the driver's side axle shaft. Recall, if you will, I snapped off this section of the driver's side axle shaft in Tennessee when I was trying to race Tony. This is the replacement I put in. When I installed it, these splines were straight. This thing has like four runs on it, and it's already twisted that much. How amazing is that? Now, I think Dale told me he would run these until the spline twisted to line up with the next spline, and then he'd throw them away. We're getting pretty close, but I'm not going to a drag strip with this, so I'm just gonna put it back in. Anyway, now we're back over here in cylinder headland. I was planning to block the heat crossover. That's something I always do for high performance applications. This tunnel ram actually has a section of metal that covers that, and so it really doesn't matter. I was gonna do it anyway so I could run different manifolds in the future, but by doing this, I'm kind of making it only match this manifold. I sure hope it works well. In the event that it works terribly, I wanted to be able to try either one of my other tunnel rams or this low-rise dual quad Edelbrock manifold I've got. However, I think that ship is sailing at this point. That means I can skip welding a plate in here, which means I'm totally done with this head. Now you might be wondering how I'm gonna seal this thing since it now matches neither gasket. Basically what I'm thinking is the 360 gasket surrounds the port completely. It doesn't obstruct it at all. Yes, it's bigger than the port we're actually using, but that'll be fine. The engine these heads came off of sat for decades, so they're a little crusty in places. And also the deck surface is kind of scraped up and nasty. So I'm gonna have these cleaned up by the machine shop. I'm gonna have the decks redone, and I'm probably gonna have them set the valve springs up as well. While they're there, these really need a valve job. These are horrible and rusty. I don't think there's any way I could possibly get these finished nicely with just clapping. Thank you, air compressor. Porting's done. Done. Good enough. Done. We're not going to talk about the fact that I accidentally narrowed this seat a little bit. Fast forward to the machinist putting exhaust seat inserts in this thing. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to throw these in the truck and take them to Johnson tomorrow, and they'll get cleaned and perfected, I'm sure. I think I put porting these heads off for like 2 months. Yeah, try almost 4. It took me half a day. I still need to do the manifold, but my hand's vibrating and I'm tired of listening to the constant hiss of my broken air compressor, so that'll wait for another day. Now maybe this is obvious, but I'm trying to build this car on a budget. Yeah, I kind of went overboard on the engine. I think I'm gonna have a little bit over $3 grand wrapped up in that by the time all's said and done. Maybe 3,500 bucks, maybe, which is ridiculous. The only other major investment I made in this car at all is a brand new set of 4 drag race tires. Now, I've never bought these before, ever. But I've got the slicks, which I already showed you. I believe they're a 28 diameter by 9 inch wide. They probably could have been 10. They're going on 10-inch wheels. Anyway, the fronts are these Mickey Thompson ET fronts. These are in a 24 by 4.5 on a 15-inch wheel. Looks kind of small. We'll see what it looks like mounted up, though. Those tires are going on these center lines. Now, I got another set of center lines previously. They were like sanded and polished to an almost mirror finish. These are more of the factory traditional spun aluminum look, which I like. Also, these rears are 15 by 10, and I don't have to relocate the leaf springs to make them fit. That was the original plan for the previous set of wheels. With these, all I have to do is cut the crap out of the quarter panel. Thing is, I'm totally fine with that for a couple different reasons. First, the factory Barracuda rear wheel opening is like one of the worst things about it. It seriously limits wheel and tire clearance. The tub inside is even more restrictive. In general, it's just obnoxious and it's not a great look. Second, well, on the front, we've got a 66 Dart fender, and those have a big, round, sweeping opening. So I'd like to kind of sort of match that. It won't have the same character to it, of course, but we can get the shape right at least. Third, this car is a piece of garbage. I don't know if I have made that clear, but it is. Donnie and I, with some help and a facility from my friend Mike, managed to spray this car in 3 days. I did try to communicate to him what an absolute piece of garbage it is, but I'm not sure he fully grasped that. We did a bunch of filler work and sanding down previous filler work, trying to get it looking as good as it does. And believe me when I say it is better, but this here is just bad. And honestly, I've been considering cutting this out since before it even got painted. I probably should have just done it. Nothing we're losing here is worth anything. It's all Bondo. Well, except for the parts that are fiberglass. As I've explained in previous videos, my main inspiration for this build is this car, the Leggett Barracuda. As a matter of fact, this car is why my 66 is painted white. Now, it's not like I'm going to mimic the graphics or the stripe or anything like that, but this vibe, this is what I want. And this car has a radius cut quarter panel, although it's way higher than I think I'm going to need to go. Yeah, the Leggett car is cut like all the way to here. We're not going there. Maybe there. Something like that. Anyway, I'm loading up the cylinder heads to take to the machine shop, the wheels, and my shiny new tires, and I'm going to take those to Rocket tomorrow so I can get them mounted. Not balanced, just mounted. Tom and Evan brought these awesome, gigantic small bolt pattern wheels back from Spring Fling in Van Nuys, California. I actually had them sitting on the car up on the lift for a little while, which is great, till this tire did this. And this is why we do not trust older tires that look fine. All I want to do is build a race car. It's truly incredible, the number of things that have to happen in the background to do that. Alan took the brake backing plates back home to the North Pole to clean and paint, so those will be nice and done sometime soon. Meanwhile, we got a new brake hose and some axle shaft seals, which are desperately needed here. So we'll get those installed before this thing goes back together. After seeing that twisted axle shaft in the Demon today, which again happened in 4 runs, I'm a little concerned about running stock shafts in this car. I'm still going to do it, but down the line I might well need to upgrade to something better. At least one company, Redbird Performance, has replacement axles available that retain the small bolt pattern, which I'm definitely keeping for this car. I'm totally committed to that small factory 5-on-4-inch pattern. It looks like they're about $500 for a pair, which is a good bit of money. I'm kind of burnt out on spending money right at the moment, so yeah, we'll hold that for a future upgrade. I really am trying to spend as little as possible on this project. Take this clutch, for example. This is a Ram clutch that Rocket had installed in a customer's vehicle, but I guess they didn't like the pedal feel, so it came back out in very short order. It looks to be in really good shape, and I'm going to go ahead and run it. I'm sure it'll handle our teeny tiny 273's horsepower fine. Hopefully it likes 5,000 RPM slipping clutch launches, though. It's sitting on a flywheel that I got from Mitchell. That was actually free. And I was running this in the Demon previously. I swapped it out for a different neutral balance flywheel, but I took the weight off the back of this, so it is now also neutral balance, which is what we need. I know I've mentioned this before, but I have been hoarding parts for this build for years. Solid motor mounts and the correct brackets, they're right there. Somewhere around here is a correct early A-body Z-bar, and I think I even have all the linkage bits. Anyway, it's dinner time. This might not look like a bunch of progress on the car, but it sure feels like it. We'll get back to this soon. It's the next day. I dropped off the cylinder heads at Johnson to have all the stuff fixed. Of course, Dan, the head man, is on vacation this week, so they won't get touched until next week. And I forgot to bring springs, which was dumb. Anyway, now I'm at Rocket, and it's time to do some tires. I think this is only my second tire machine adventure, but I'm sure that'll be fine. It's not like they're really nice, rare wheels that could be easily damaged or anything. You know what I didn't get? Inner tubes. It's fine, I probably would have just ruined them anyway. You don't have to run tubes in your slicks, but it helps. That's one, and I didn't even ruin it. Don't look at that, that was already there. Oh yeah, these tires had plenty of good miles left in them. Believe it or not, the rubbers on the valve seals are also a little crispy. So I am replacing those. Don't worry about that. Just as a general rule, I don't think rubber should make crunching noises or look like this. Anyway, yep, this valve stem's kind of cool. It says Schrader USA on it. So obviously we're gonna let that one ride. Too easy. I keep hearing screaming bald eagle noises. I feel like that's a sign. Yeah, screams in freedom. Anyway, these are mounted. It's amazing how light they are. Seriously, pretty cool. So there's one more important, annoying, and expensive part of the Barracuda puzzle solved. Can't wait to bolt these on there. So gloomy. It's the next day, and this is looking pretty good. Even though it is like a ½ inch shorter than what's on there. I just didn't want to step up to a 25, so that seems nice. I do love the look of that duller wheel, and the painted letters on the MT tires, pretty sweet. They could use a little cleanup, but then so could a lot of things. That's a lot of beef. It also definitely doesn't fit there without cutting the wheel well. The car is currently up on blocks and there's no weight on the rear axle, so the suspension's just drooped. It's hanging like here. Anyway, we have no idea where this will actually sit vertically. I just know that we're gonna be cutting a lot of this out. Now these early A-bodies have notoriously narrow wheel wells, but I do want to point out this tire would fit in there if the spacing was absolutely perfect on the wheel. Unfortunately, it's not. This 15x10 kicks the tire out that way several inches, which is why we're going to have to cut the quarter panel. My other option was these wheels or a set of steel wheels, both of which kick the tire in and necessitating relocating the leaf spring. I just didn't want to mess with any of that. If I could have found a wheel perfectly between the two, well, we might just be in business, but small bolt Mopar performance wheels are really hard to come by, so that wasn't an option this time. And I'm certainly not going to spend a bunch of money having any custom built either. The prodigal Alan returns with these beautiful refinished backing plates. Nice. I'd love to be cutting a radius in this quarter right now, but there are a bunch of other things that kind of need to happen first. We need to have a reference point, and that reference point is going to be at least the axle shaft and maybe just a wheel on there so we can get a center mark off of that. To have the axle shaft in and actually located in the housing, we need the center chunk. And to have everything line up correctly and spaced out where it should be, well, we kind of need a brake drum on there. So essentially what needs to happen now is everything. Alan's going to start by getting the brakes back together, then putting the center chunk we removed from the Demon in the Barracuda, while I work on this mail truck, which I hate. I hate it for a lot of reasons, but one really good reason is the mud it dropped in my eye that I can't get out. It's a couple hours later, the dirt is still in my eye, and the crap has hit the fan. These drum brakes, as we removed them from the 8 3/4 donor axle, were kind of missing some stuff, and I didn't know that. We really need a parking brake for this car. For one thing, I think you have to have that for some kind of important racing regulations, but also it's a stick shift car, and having some way to park it in gear and keep it from rolling away would be really nice. Unfortunately, these drums were already partially parted out, and so we're missing the crossbars that go here and the e-brake arms. Now I have some donors here, but they came off of 9-inch brakes, so they're useless. I have piles of random drum brake stuff, but nowhere in those piles do I have any 10-inch rear brakes to donate these parts. I've got 11-inch rear brakes. I've got multiple sets of 10-inch front brakes, but I've got nothing that matches this to donate the parts we need. And surprise, surprise, you can't just go buy new ones either. I would be fully on board with modifying these parts if I thought there was some way to make that work, but that's just not a good idea. Oh, never you mind the fact there were 2 trailing shoes sitting in here a second ago. It's fixed now, but it's a moot point because we can't put these together. And remember, that makes like the rest of this operation grind to a total halt. I have just got to make some more forward progress on this car. Something has to get done. So I'm going to see if I can do that. Carefully. Because of course it's teetering on some random blocks back there and could roll off and kill me at any time. Oh, I should move this. Thought I'd mount the drive shaft loop real fast, but it doesn't match up with the floor at all. It's the same design as the one in the Demon, but the floor is not the same. You can see these bends here, so that's a problem. Also, I still need to patch this stupid floor. Parts of it are still made out of Bondo. I could put the gears in. I ordered a couple paper gaskets. Still don't have those, so I could use silicone. This thing actually has an old paper gasket on it still that is not ripped at all. Do I dare trust that? Tell you what, I'm feeling like a lucky punk, so I wiped this gasket down. I did wipe out the housing as well. Probably could have done a little bit more thorough job, but anyway, I'm just gonna send it, as the kids are saying, and I'm sure I will not regret this decision anytime soon. I still have to scrape the silicone off this other housing. And because I'm doing this in the back of the shop, I can't possibly get my jack back there, which means I will be doing this the hardest way possible. Well, the second hardest way possible anyway. Please hold. Are you bored yet? Okay, good enough. Okay, here we go. Oh God. There's a reason they call these pigs sometimes. Oh, I'm gonna fall over. Here we go. Did I mention this is heavy? Well, it is. Whew. Nothing to it. They practically install themselves. Glorious. 489 gears or 48 or whatever it is. This is the cone type sure grip, which is technically worse and technically not rebuildable when they wear out. And it's not if, but when. Apparently you can take them apart and file or sand things and get them to kind of sure grip again. This one seems to work very well. Well enough to ruin all the axle shafts in the land, so I'm not worried about it at all for now. There are a couple good things about the cone type sure grip. For one thing, you don't need the limited slip additive stuff. You can just use normal 80/90 gear oil. There's no clutch that requires that friction modifier. Another nice thing about this design, the buttons that we had to fight with on the Demon using a long magnet and a stick, well, they just stay in place on this thing. It's a bigger disc, or it's part of a block, I don't even remember. But they don't just fall out, so that's nice. Due to the arch of these leaves, the back of this car is going to be up pretty high. Obviously the axle's drooped out right now, but it really doesn't end up all that much higher when there's weight on it. I realized there was a leaf spring in the way and you couldn't see the pad I was talking about. That's the factory snubber pad. This is where our adjustable snubber is sitting right now. And again, I'm pretty sure with weight on the axle, it's gonna go up like 2 inches max. These springs are gnarly and there's really no weight in this car. It's like 4 inches. And we want this preloaded because, I don't know, apparently that's the best. It's the way the Demon's always been. I may only have 3 inches of adjustment in this snubber. We're gonna put some kind of support pad up here for the snubber to rest on. Dale's Demon used to have that, but currently doesn't. And that section of the floor, like not only the pad, but everything around it is absolutely mangled beyond recognition. It's bad. So we're gonna make up some kind of pad brace thing and then run some sort of extra support for it. We'll figure that out later. Working on the drive-on lift's great, except for all the ducking. You know, I should have chased all the threads on these studs, but I think it's fine. Well, it's mostly fine. Could swear I'm smelling chow mein noodles, but I think it's actually my armpits. No, that just smells like Old Spice. Okay, I don't know. Torquing to spec. Did you know that these 8 3/4 axle housings can warp? Like pretty badly, actually. That's a big part of why we need the pinion snubber. It's an excellent traction device, but it keeps this axle from destroying itself as well. Okay, golden. Now I believe I mentioned I'm gonna be using the spare old school adjustable race shocks from the Demon. There's a set of these on there right now. These came in a box with it. Well, the shock that's free is the shock for me. I'd love to install these right now. The issue is, Even though they're a good bit longer than the KYBs that are on there now, they are not long enough to hang on these pins with the axle drooped like this. And I'm concerned that even with these springs compressed with weight on here, they still might be at the end of their travel. Really, dude? Can you come off, please? Ah, thank you. Every time. The way you adjust these old school shocks is you collapse them all the way and listen for the click. Once there's a click, you can twist the bottom of the shock in the top of the shock, and it should click as you do that. You turn counterclockwise to soften the dampening, and you turn clockwise to increase the dampening, or damping, or whatever that word is. Yeah, they're definitely fully extended, and we're just not getting there, so at least with them hanging on there, we're a little closer to the finish line. Sure. Now, if I wanted to go full Uncle Tony on this thing, I'd throw one air shock over here on the passenger side. And I still might do that, but for now I'm gonna run these. Okay, well, guess that's all we're getting done back here. All right, I guess I can get the cut chunk of the brake hose off. Maybe. They've done studies, you know. 60% of the time, the flat jaw vice grips work every time. Except when that happens, more vice grips. That'll fix it. Oh yeah, nothing to her, except just kind of twisting the line. All right, yep, there we go. Rad. In case you don't know, I'm gonna tell you, and then we'll both know. The rear wheel bearings on Mopars from this time are not lubricated by gear oil from the differential. They're actually packed with grease exactly like a front wheel bearing. The fact that they're tapered bearings, just like the front bearings, well, might help to explain that, I don't know. Anyway, the gear oil needs to stay in there with the differential and not get out here with the wheel bearings. The way that is accomplished is with an axle shaft seal. You can see there's one right here. It's in terrible shape, and there was a bunch of gear oil outside of it, so I knew it needed to be replaced. I ordered a replacement from the O'Reilly. They actually had these in stock. The part number is 8695S. Anyway, I'm gonna grab a slide hammer with a hook on it, and we'll see if we can pop that old one out of there. Like most jobs, I'm sure there are like 1,000 other ways to do this. Heck, you might be able to just pop it out with a pry bar and a hammer, I don't know. Anyway, slide hammer seemed fun. I never get to use this thing. Whee! Okay, well, it's ruined. We're off to a good start. Hasn't moved yet, and I just ruined my shim gasket. Ah! Wow. Yeah, it's good and ruined. How many people are headed to the comments to tell me I don't know how to use a slide hammer? I bet it's a couple. Thank you. Pro tip. Anytime you're messing with seals, taking them out or putting them in, when you're done, look for this. This is the little springy thingy that goes inside and holds the rubber lip to the sealing surface. Oftentimes these will pop out. Sometimes when you're totally destroying them, that makes sense, but also when you're driving the new ones in. Occasionally, the force of the banging will cause the springy thingy to shoot out the back, and you'll have to go in there and fish it out and then carefully guide it back into the seal lip. Looking inside the end of this axle tube, you can see a couple steps. This biggest outer diameter is where the wheel bearing sits. This middle one is where your seal goes. You're gonna drive that in there with ideally a seal installer tool or a big socket or a piece of pipe, whatever. And then there's a lip back there. Now the seal doesn't necessarily have to butt up against that lip, but it has to be far enough in that the little sleevey thingy, which goes behind your wheel bearing, is not going to hit it. So you do want to pretty much get it to the back there. Now I believe it was Frank Zappa who said, keep it greasy so it goes down easy. Well, that's a very useful bit of advice for a mechanic. When installing a seal or a race or all kinds of things really, a little bit of wheel bearing grease goes a long way to helping. I'm gonna carefully set this in here. I'm gonna clean my greasy hands. And I'm gonna grab this. This is a seal and race installer, and it just happens to be almost the exact same outer diameter as that seal. It'll go into the tube and match the size of the seal so we're not deforming it massively as it goes, but it's not big enough that it'll get caught in there. It should be absolutely perfect. Obviously, as I'm doing this, I'm going to try and get it to go evenly, but well, I've never been great at that. What did I just say? There you go. That's pretty much there. Yeah, I think it is. Yep. It's an axle shaft seal, and the spring didn't even come flying out. Over on the passenger side now, I did get the seal out. I remembered how the hook thing works best. Hooked it on there, angled the hammer up here so it couldn't just pop out immediately. Anyway, this is interesting. This is an original Chrysler part number, and this is a Pentastar. So for a second there, I thought this was the original seal, till I noticed all of the silicone all over it. That got me thinking perhaps there was an issue here. So I looked in the tube and immediately wished I hadn't, because apparently this thing lost a bearing over here, and it actually looks like the seal is spun as well. Look at the grooves. And then look at the big chunks out of the bottom. Should I seal the new seal with silicone? I don't know, I'm not going to. Hopefully that doesn't bite me in the future. Place your bets now on this axle leaking from literally everywhere. Anyway, I started hammering. Nice. Good deal. We've got axle shaft seals. Now, if only we had brakes and axle shafts and wheels and some holes cut in this thing, man, we'd be dangerous. All right, it's time to level with you. It's Friday, August 15th at 7:30 p.m. And that means a couple things. First, I'm not going to get anything else done in this video, which is unfortunate. Second, why am I hustling to do all of this to this car now? Well, I have a goal. As I explained in my recent Dart Sport video, I cannot get anything done without having a deadline, an important goal, something that needs to happen. And for this project, the thing that needs to happen is making it to the No Name Nationals this year. In case you're not aware, the No Name Nationals is an annual event that takes place in September in Sikeston, Missouri. This is an event for smaller YouTube channels. You have to have 500 subscribers to participate. What you might not know is the No Name Nationals, well, that's one of the reasons I started my channel. I thought, I could get 500 subscribers, and it turns out I could. Only that first year, when I then asked the Google Maps how far Sikeston, Missouri was, and it told me 2,000 miles, and diesel cost $6 a gallon, well, that was not a thing I could do. I've got a bunch of friends with other YouTube channels that go to this event every year, and for quite a while now, I have dreamed of getting this car together in time to go there. This is a lofty goal, because right now my car looks like this, and my as yet untested engine looks like this. And there are tons of other little components I need to go through. Here are a couple now. I've got some crusty carburetors to rebuild, and the list goes on and on. The first day of the No Name Nationals this year, Friday, September 19th, or to put that another way, exactly 5 weeks from today. Yeah, this is a lofty goal, and by no means am I guaranteeing that it's gonna happen. I've got a couple more weeks before I make the decision, am I going, or is it just a dream this year? And there's another level of fun to this, because between now and the No Name Nationals, there is exactly one test and tune at my local home track, Bremerton Raceway. And it's a week from today. And you can go ahead and place your bets now on whether or not Alan and I can figure out all of these nightmares in a week. It's been almost a year since those last runs with Dale's Demon. I've retired that car from racing because it's a survivor and I do want it to continue surviving. And for that reason, I haven't made it to a drag strip at all this year. Kind of running out of time. Can you hear that rain out there? Yeah, summer's like over in the Northwest. If I don't get to do any racing this year, that's fine. But I sure would like to. So over the next week, I'm going to be jamming on this thing, and there will definitely be more videos coming. Hopefully you'll stick around to watch those. I've gotten comments in the past saying things like, "Oh, Jamie, you don't build cars." I'm touching every single part of this car. I'm building it from the ground up, from the nose back, everything. It's going to be really interesting to see if I'm any good at that. Anyway, I do want to take a moment to say thank you to all of my members, in particular my gold members. There are a bunch of you. Your contributions seriously help with projects like this one. Without them, I don't know that I'd be able to just hit order on things like drag racing tires and other things to try and slam this thing together in a matter of weeks and go do awesome stuff. I really appreciate you. Whether you're a member or a subscriber or none of those things, I do have to thank you also for watching my videos. Just that helps. These days, the ad revenue from these videos, well, covers my bills and all of the parts and projects that you see. The rest of this insanity, it keeps all of that going. So simply by watching this video, you've helped with that. Also in my quest for global domination. And I thank you very much for it. And remember, you miss 1,000,000,000% of the shots you don't take. I'm taking mine. We'll see how it goes. That's it. I'm moving to the desert.